Hello, hello, hello. This is Tanya Brewington. I am the CEO and founder of Courageously Alive. And I'm here with my new channel, Healing Relationships with Your Toxic Mom, or Healing Toxic Mom Relationships. I want to talk about what it looks like and what it takes to actually heal your relationship with your toxic mom if that's who you are. And you know if this is who you are when you know that you are when your relationship with your mother doesn't feel safe. You know this is who you are if your mother is feels competitive with you. You know this is who you are if your mother has been negative or emotionally or verbally abusive to you throughout your lifetime. You also know it's who you are if your mother has been physically abusive to you at some point in your past. Now, there's a difference to me between disciplinarian and abusive, even when it comes to physical hitting or anything like that. And so I'm talking about abuse. I'm talking about abuse. You know this is you if your mother abandoned you for any reason she wasn't available, whether it's because she left and she did something else with her life, or she left and she wasn't around because she died when you were young. Oftentimes, what happens is we deal with the impact, the the negative impact of having a toxic mom. And we grow up sometimes, as we're growing up, we think this might be normal because it's our normal. But then there are times when we look at our friends, we look at the relationships of other young people with their moms. It could be daughters, it could be sons, even. And you find that those relationships are totally different than your relationship with your mom. And what that tells you is that your relationship really, really is different. And I know that as someone who's grown up with what I felt was a toxic relationship with my mother, I can tell you that there were times when I didn't want to tell anybody about my relationship with my mother. I didn't want to talk about my mother because I knew that my relationship didn't feel loving, it didn't feel supportive, it didn't feel kind, and I felt that I was targeted by my mother because she was angry with my father. Now, the other thing I can tell you is as I was growing up, it was always a thing of you don't talk about what's going on in your house. And so, even though this was the experience, it wasn't something that I would have shared with anyone because that was drilled into me. You don't talk about what's going on in your home. Now, it took me as an adult when I decided that one of the things that would help me was to get therapy. And I was in a group therapy session, and I heard one person in my group talk about her feelings towards her mother. And her feelings were she hated her mother. And it was during Mother's Day, and she said she wished there was a card that says I hate you and I never want to see you again. And I was totally blown away when this person said that because I had never heard anyone verbally say that they had a problem with their mother, that there was an issue with their relationship with their mother, and that their relationship with their mother was so egregious, so painful, so toxic that this person wanted to tell her mother that she hated her. I had never, I would never have said that to my mother. Even if I thought it at some point, the thought didn't linger very long because we were taught you can't say that about your mother. But I remember hearing that and saying, "Wow, I'm not the only one." And I think it was the first time in my life I ever felt that I was not the only person who had this relationship with her mom that wasn't supportive, it wasn't nurturing, it wasn't kind. And I felt very ambivalent about my mother. Fast forward, I also did work at a church that I attended, and I facilitated workshops for women who had experienced sexual assault. And I can tell you that time and time and time again, one of the things that people questioned, there were several things that happened. One question was always the why me question. Why did this happen to me, the sexual assault? The second question was, why did God let this happen? And the third question was always, where was my mother and why didn't she protect me? And when I kept hearing it over and over and over again, I realized I wasn't the only person who had had this disruptive relationship with their mom to the point that it really impacted how I saw my mother. It impacted how I saw myself. It impacted how I trusted other women or didn't. And it also impacted my decision not to have children, at least at that point. And I knew that for me, I didn't want to have any children until I could figure out what had happened in my relationship with my mother, because I didn't want to be a toxic mom to my children. I didn't want to pass that on to my children. And I didn't understand why it was going on in the first place. So I didn't want to actually be the giver of that to someone else. And so as I've continued and as I've done some work, one of the things I have found is that there are lots and lots and lots of us out here who've had this toxic relationship with our moms that have impacted us in such a way that our lives, that the way that we see ourselves is impacted, that our lives are impacted negatively in some way because we didn't have the nurturing, we didn't have the guidance, we didn't have the loving care, the loving gaze even of a mother. And your mother, it could be because your mother was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. She could have been competitive with you. She could have been a smother mother. She could have been the person who just didn't care what was going on with you. She wasn't protective. All of the things that we tend to think about when we think about a mom. And so here we are. And what I want to talk about in this channel is how you can actually resolve that particular wound, because it's a wound. And it can be an unaddressed, unhealed wound for many people until you decide you want to look at it. You want to actually pull the scab off and see what's going on and lance it so that it can heal. That's what this channel is about. That's what we're going to dive into. We're going to go through week by week, and I'll share with you some of the experiences that I've had. I'll share with you some of the experiences that I've had with clients, the clients who and other people that I've talked with who've had this particular experience. And I'll also talk about some things that we're seeing in popular culture that actually acknowledge this particular wound in the lives of other people that we see around, that we know, that we may see them, we know them, but we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. And we'll also talk about how to resolve it. And so, if that's interesting to you, then come back. Welcome to the channel. I want you to hit subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I drop new videos. And as you're notified, we're going to go through this healing journey together. And I look forward to you being here, but also for you being here and participating in the discussion. Take care. See you again on the next video.